strutting onwards from last week's podcast episode, number 91, if you were wondering. I was sharing more about my morning practice that started each and every single day of mine. And today we're going to bookend that with my evening practice. Now, the reason I do these practices is because I realized a long, long time ago, if I do not bookend each and every single day, then every day tends to blur into the next, and another week's gone, another month's gone. And before I knew it, at times, I was like, shit, another year's gone. What have I done with it? Now, I'm all about moving, strutting through life with deliberate intention. I'm not here to settle. I want more. I want to become my most elite version of me. And that means I cannot afford to fall asleep at the wheel of my life or myself. So, introducing you to my evening practice. Now, the number one thing that I endeavor to do every single day is to get off all of my devices an hour before I'm in my bed and ready to sleep. The most potent times for you to recalibrate and point your subconscious mind in the direction you want it to go to are first thing in the morning. And I talked at length about that in last week's podcast episode. And also last thing at night. So if you're on your phone, browsing, doom scrolling, falling down different rabbit holes, what you're doing is just putting more and more information into your mind. And what you want to be doing is clearing out your mind so you can become a vehicle to connect to your genius, your higher self, and so that you can move through the world with more clarity, conviction, and confidence. Oh, and just in case we haven't been introduced, Star Monroe here, and this is the Star Monroe Show, where each week we dive into all things main character energy, baby. So let's go back to my evening practice. I endeavor, listen to that word, I endeavor to get off my phone and all devices 1 hour before bedtime. I don't always manage it because I have wonky, strange working hours, and yet I will make sure I'm off my phone at least 30 minutes before I go to bed because I don't want to feed my brain with all that nonsense that's online. I don't watch the news. I am very aware, and I want you to become more aware that your brain is like a sponge and it is literally soaking up information left, right, and center. And you need to become more of a conscious consumer about what goes into your mind, especially just before you go to sleep. And I have weird ways of getting off my devices, and I do it with a flourish. I know that I get very addicted to my computer, to checking my emails, to checking my phone. And so around the time I'm going to bed, I will log off my computer and shut down my phone and then close my computer with a flourish. And I tell myself, we're done, no more. Then I move into my evening practice, and that is away from my workspace. I'm no longer in work mode. I'm moving into my evening time. And I will look around my apartment, and I live in a very small bijou apartment, and I will make sure that it doesn't look like a tip. So I will organize things. I do not like living in a messy environment because it makes me feel out of sorts. Now, you would have heard me say, and I will say it again, that we cannot control anything outside us. Life is chaotic, unpredictable, wildly uncertain. Yet I can create a sense of order for myself in my environment, and it makes me feel calmer, more centered, and I'm all for feeling more calm and centered, because when I do, my brain has more space to be able to process things. And there's always things going on in the day that, I'm like, oh, that upset me, or this upset me. And actually, I don't even know things upset me. It's the way I start moving through the world. And if I notice myself becoming more irritable, or I become grumpy, I'm like, oh, something's triggered you. We have to look at that at some point. So I'm always looking at my way I'm reacting to life. So yeah, I'll tidy everything up. One thing I do like doing is I put all my supplements out ready for the morning, and I get ready, make my cup of coffee, like I put it all out so it's there. I'm my own best lover, my best friend, and so I'm setting myself up for the next morning. I then go and have a shower, and I have this whole ritual that it started off with, I bought a device called the New Face, where I would have a shower and then I would do the New Face and then do all my moisturizing things. And then last year I bought a red light therapy mask. So from the shower, I go into my little wellness arena. Now, I really want to expand on this. When I used to live in the UK, I had a whole studio. I had a Pilates studio set up in my home. It was one of my businesses. And when I had this whole kind of studio, I never fucking used it. I never used to go in it. Now I live in a small bijou apartment in Turkey, and I'm walking now. I'm literally, I wish you could see me. Outside my bathroom is a tiny hallway with my washing machine and my cupboard space. I have set up a yoga mat here. I've put my acupressure mat on the floor, and I put a little lamp on the floor so it's all nice and cozy. And literally come out the shower and I lay down on that mat. So there's nothing fancy about this. And then I use my red light mask, and it's for 10 minutes on a 10-minute timer. I do two things, and it's taken me a while to get here to do this. The fact that I get to lay there, close my eyes, and I've got this red light mask on me, I go into my own little world where I watch my thoughts, because we are the observer of our thoughts. We're not our thoughts, we're the observer. And I will watch them, and then I will direct my thoughts into what I want and how I want to feel. So I'm visioning for 10 minutes. And whilst I'm doing that, I'm massaging my stomach area. We hold our energy in this area. And so I massage my tummy with oil, and I move around in a circular fashion. And that may take 2 or 3 minutes. And then I rest my hands on my tummy and watch my thoughts. And my thoughts are fucking loopy, and they will take me off with them. And then I'm like, oh, we've gone down that rabbit hole. Come back. And so that's what I'm doing for those 10 minutes. And I would say that's the closest thing I've got to meditation. Once I've done that, I will tidy that up, get dressed, ready for bed. In my bedroom, I always have a lamp on. I love lamp lighting. I don't like major overhead lighting. And the lamp is an LED lamp. You can get them from Amazon, and they can change color. And I have that on a pink or a purple. So as I walk into my bedroom, the light is very low. And then I put lavender oil behind my ears, because it smells nice and it's good for sleep. I take my evening supplements. I'm trying to think what they are. Magnesium. I take some supplements for my digestive system. And then I get into bed, I grab my evening journal and I write a love note to myself. Now, I'm not writing war and peace in the end of the day. I'm writing, and I want to preface this by saying that sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. Fucking hell, I just want to go to bed. And yet I discipline myself. That word discipline means to teach. I'm teaching myself every single day to show up differently for myself. I'm teaching myself to have better standards for myself. I'm holding myself to a higher standard by doing this, even when I don't want to do it. And look, we are always going to have parts of us, the least unevolved parts of us, the rebel teen, the wounded child that want to go, oh, I don't want to do this. Let's just get on with it and go to bed. And I know it's important for me to take stock of my day. So I've ended up calling it a love note. And literally, what I'm doing is witnessing myself at the end of the day and noticing how I move through the day. And I'm noticing how I'm feeling. And then, if I'm feeling out of sorts, anxious, overwhelmed, I will write to myself in my kindest, most compassionate, firm voice. And I will say, it's okay. We can let this go. Let it go. Put it down. Because sleep to me is my number one life elixir, and sleep is a sacred time. And I know that when I go to sleep, my subconscious gets to work. Your subconscious is like a big filing system, and it holds all the data from before we were born and everything else that's happened. And your subconscious is there to find evidence for the thoughts that you keep having. So I know that when I go to sleep, I need to divest myself of what it is that's kind of dragging me down, making me feel a bit like shitty. And again, I'm not here to put a happy, smiley mask on it, pretend it's not there. So, what I do in my love note is I just notice how I'm feeling and just say, it's okay, let it go. We'll figure this out. The next steps will reveal itself to us when the time is right. Then, whatever needs to come out of me, I write it. Sometimes it's two sentences, sometimes it's a full paragraph. I'm not. I'm not beholden to having to write a certain amount at the end of the day, because I know I've got the morning pages where I do write. Um, and yet I know this practice is intentionally there to support me in divesting what I no longer need. And also, all my practices, if you listen to last week's episode, all these practices are ways for me to connect to myself. And I was a woman who was completely disconnected from herself, disconnected from my genius, my higher self. And I ended up destroying myself and my life with addictions, my shitty life choices, and the way that I let the least unevolved parts of me run the show. And I'm not here for that. I'm here to be my most elite version of myself. And really, when you listen to my wisdom, my teachings, I'm here to be my most elite version of myself. And it's the same with as if I put myself into the gym, or I went off and started to learn ballet or another skill. It would require me to double down and practice. And that's what I'm doing every single day. I'm practicing at the connection to myself, because I know when I do not connect to myself, I end up getting swept away with life, and I end up returning to habits and patterns that do not serve me and that clog me up, and it's uncomfortable. So, this way, the way that I show up now is requiring more effort. And at the very heart of every human being, we're lazy motherfuckers. We will always choose the path of least resistance. Yet, the path of least resistance, living there is highly uncomfortable, especially if you align with me as a woman who wants more. If you want more in life, then you've got to demand more of yourself. So it circles all the way back to these practices that bookend each and every single day. Also, in that short love note to myself in my evening journal, I will share my appreciation for myself, life, and it could it's really simple. It's like, I appreciate myself, I appreciate life. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Shut the journal, snuggle into bed, and I always read a novel. Something that does not tax my mind, something that is easy to read and takes me off into another world. What I've learned, I've always loved reading ever since I was 8, 9. I've always loved reading, and I have must admit I spent years not reading anything at all. And I've rediscovered the joy of reading over the last 2 years whilst I've been living in Turkey because I don't tend to watch a lot of TV anymore. And over these last 2 years of reading, I found books that light me up, that make me feel like, oh, this is nice. I'm in bed, I'm reading a book, this is a great story, and I love getting involved in a story. What I've learned is if I read any books that are around murder or they're highly suspenseful, they're scary, that's not good for me because then that gets my subconscious finding more of that. And there's a part of me that is there's a part of me that is anxious and I need to take care of that anxious version of me. And if I input that information in my brain just before I'm going to bed, it's not good. I tend to have really weird dreams and I'm not there for that. As I said, sleep is my number one life elixir. I want to make sure I have a good night's sleep. I want to make sure I'm pointing my subconscious into finding evidence to supporting me in strutting through the world with more confidence, unbotheredness, and exclusivity. So I have learned what books and what stories I like to read, and sometimes I end up getting a dud book. That's part and parcel of it, and I end up. And also in the process of this, I'm really discovering the genre of writing that pleases me. And aren't we here to please ourselves? Gosh, I could go off on a complete tangent about that. That's something I invite you to journal on, to write upon. I'm here to please myself because that in itself will come up against a lot of conditioning around how dare you please yourself? You're so selfish. This is the Kool-Aid women have been drinking for years, that we're here to always put everyone else before ourselves. And, if there's time and energy left over from all of that, then we may get a peek in. And I'm over here waving this beautiful, flamboyant silk scarf going, no, darling, you're here to please yourself. And then I read until I get tired and then lights out and I sleep because I've put everything into place for my subconscious to find what it needs to find whilst I am sleeping. I used to have a more robust wake up time and going to bedtime, and yet recently my work schedule has changed. So I'm playing around with that. I'm not rigid on I have to be in bed by a certain time, and yet what I do make sure I do is to get at least 8 hours of good quality sleep every single night, because and sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes I'll wake up and get 5 hours, but I know on those days that I've only got 5 hours sleep, fuck me, I am a nightmare. And it spikes my anxiety, my bandwidth is much lower, so I have to take better care of myself. This is in the last episode I was talking about, you've got to build an encyclopedia on yourself, and so you have got to recognize when your bandwidth is low and then act accordingly. Refine your actions accordingly. So I know on the days that I haven't had a good night's sleep that They are not the days for me to have great big conversations, to unpack things, or to even think about where my fucking life is going because my bandwidth is low. So it requires patience, discipline, compassion, firmness with myself to notice that, to go, actually, today's not the day to think about it. You can write a note and we can come back to it tomorrow. And I don't know about you, but normally when I'm fucking tired, normally when I'm more anxious, that's when my brain goes, oh, we need to figure everything out. And there's a reason for that. It's because we tick over into our sympathetic nervous system. We go into that fight flight response, and then the production of adrenaline and cortisol ramps up. Cortisol skews your perception of time. So when you're tired and you're reacting to life and you're not noticing and you're not doing anything about it, you get sucked into this loop of being jacked up on those chemicals, which then tell you that you haven't got enough time. So that's why you feel like you need to fucking fix everything. Um, what I'm learning as I get older, nothing needs to be fixed. Everything tends to work out in its own good timing. And the other thing to add on to that, things don't come to us when we want them. Things come to us when we're ready, which circles me beautifully back to why I have these morning practices and these evening practices, because I want to be ready for whatever life is going to gift me, whatever life is going to present to me. And these practices are my way of connecting into myself, connecting into my higher self, my genius, to reestablish that connection to groundedness, centeredness, peacefulness. And then as I strut into my world, these act as touchstones to remind me when I'm spinning out, I call it tizzing, when I'm tizzing, spinning out, I'm getting all in the tears. It's like, you need to come back. You need to come back into here, come back home. So, as always, if anything here resonates with you, then take it, play around with it, and allow yourself to play around with these routines and slot in things. Uh, See how you feel when you start doing it. And remember that missing a day, not doing a day is part and parcel of it. Your job is to get going the next day, not to go, oh, I failed and I'll give up. That's the least unevolved part of you showing up. It's, I didn't do it yesterday. Why didn't I do it yesterday? Oh, well, I didn't make it a priority and I thought I could skip it. And so that's fine. You take responsibility. If you want to shift and change, as I said earlier, if you want the world to give you more, if you want more, then you need to demand more of yourself, and you need to get a handle on these pesky least unevolved parts of you that will run the show unless you do something about it and you show up and evolve yourself into being an iconic older woman in her main character energy. As always, let's stay in touch on the socials. I'm Star Monroe on TikTok, Ms. Star Monroe on Instagram. Until next time, stay fucking fabulous.